Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Debrief on ABC News Live. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm Kimberly Brooks. I really hate that we have to start the show off today talking about some tragic news out of Thousand Oaks, California. It's hard to wrap your mind around, but there has been another mass shooting inside a bar that was packed with college students. So we know that 12 people were killed, and officials say the gunman is dead. So right now, we're going to go straight to Will Carr, who is at the scene. Will, if you can, just tell us what happened and what's the latest.
Well, Kimberly, good morning. It is just a horrific scene behind me. This all unfolded at a popular country western bar last night, just after 11 o'clock. The Borderline, it is a place that a lot of college students come. Last night was college night, so they allowed people under 21 to go in. So it was packed with teenagers, with the gunman, who authorities have now identified as Ian David Long, 28 years old, went inside. He had a .45 caliber Glock with an extended magazine. So in California, legally you can have 10 rounds plus one in the chamber in a handgun. Well, he had an extended magazine which allowed him to fire indiscriminately into the crowd. Chaos ensued. Also, there's a lot of smoke. Witnesses believe that he set off at least one smoke bomb to create more chaos. So people just started scattering. Some people picked up chairs. They broke windows. They raced through those windows trying to get to safety. I'm standing across from a golf course. We heard from one homeowner who lives on that golf course, or next to the golf course, who said that he was on his patio about 11:30 last night when he saw 8 or 9 teenagers running across the golf course covered in blood and just screaming for people to call 911. When it was all said and done, the gunman was killed as well. It's unclear if he took his own life or if he was shot by responding officers, but 12 people killed, including a sergeant who was in this area on patrol. He was on the phone with his wife. He told his wife that he loved her. He ran inside, and he ultimately was shot and killed. His name is Sergeant Ron Helis. He's being called a hero, a cop's cop. He was a 29-year veteran of the Ventura County Sheriff's Department. And the sheriff here, who's actually retiring tomorrow, got quite emotional when talking about Sergeant Helis and the sacrifice that he made trying to go in. And he said, without a doubt, Sergeant Helis helped save lives. Kimberly.
Wow, that is just terrible news to hear, hearing the details about all of this. Is there anything that we're learning so far about the investigation that's starting?
So we have just learned a lot of new information about the gunman, Ian David Long, 28 years old. We learned that he is actually a Marine Corps veteran. And earlier this year, he doesn't live that far from where we are right now in Thousand Oaks. Earlier this year, evidently, law enforcement responded to his house for a disturbance call. And because he's a veteran, they feared that he was suffering potentially from PTSD. Now, evidently, they thought that he was okay back in April, and they did not take him into custody for that. But because of that incident, they're now looking into whether PTSD would play any part in a motive here. At this point, they do not know what the motive is. They don't know what took Long into that country bar behind me and caused him to start shooting. They're scouring his social media right now. We also know that he drove in a car. There's been reports that it's his mom's car that he parked in that parking lot right behind me. They're waiting for a search warrant to be able to go into that car, and we also know that they're at his house right now waiting to go into that house to figure out exactly what led Long to this scene. Kimberly.
Thank you so much, Will Carr. I know you're going to stay on the scene and have more updates later. Right now, we're going to go to Steve Gomez. He is a former FBI special agent in charge, and he's in the LA Bureau on the phone. Steve, how are you?
Very good. Sorry for being here on these circumstances.
Yes. So speaking to you, I just want to know, in terms of the investigation, how are, the officials looking to determine what the motive is?
Well, they're going to try to figure out if he had any contact with that bar in the past. Maybe the people that attend that bar. I believe it's a country music bar. The college students go there. So they're going to look to see if he had any issues with any college students. He's 29. He's a former Marine. So there may not be any connections, but they'll look into that. They'll try to figure out if any witnesses that were there recognized him. So they'll be doing a lot of interviews there. Then they're going to, go to his residence and talk to his family members, his friends, his associates, neighbors, co-workers, try to figure out, was he talking about committing violence? Was he talking about an issue with somebody? They're going to try to get into his head to figure out what was going on leading up to him going into that bar.
Yeah, Steve, what do you make of this? I mean, these sorts of things are happening with such regularity now, such frequency. We just had Pittsburgh, we had the yoga studio shooting. This is no doubt an epidemic. What do you make of the regularity of all of these shootings?
My thoughts on this, and I've been watching this and examining these types of issues, active shooters and now hate crimes recently, we're dealing with a problem in our society where people cannot cope with their issues, whether it's mental health issues, whether they are having a problem, friction with a coworker, friction with a student, fellow student, whatever it is, family member, they can't cope. They do not know how to adjust for whatever reason. I don't know why it's become worse in the last few years, but they're not having the ability to adjust to their situations. And instead of talking to people or talking it out and dealing with the situation, they just go into this passive-aggressive mode where they then grab a gun or a knife or whatever, and they go in and they hurt people. And that's their way of expressing their frustration, it seems like.
Yeah, so you've dealt with situations like this before. In terms of what it's like for a cop to be on a scene of something this tragic, can you describe to us what that's like for officers to respond to something like this?
Well, I can tell you, I was a former LAPD officer, so I wore the uniform in a dangerous area of Los Angeles, and every day you put that uniform on and that bulletproof vest, you're asking yourself, am I going to get shot today? Am I going to deal with this situation in my shift today where my life is going to be in danger? And I understand he had a wife, he had an older child. That risk and that sense of, hope that you're going to have a good day and not have something like this. It gets even worse when you have a family because I was a police officer as a single man with no wife, no children. It's even worse and harder for those officers that have a family because you don't know what you're going to encounter. And he is an absolute hero. I mean, just hearing from the sheriff, who gave the press conference, talking about, the deputy heard shots being fired. He went in there. He went towards the shots, went towards the fire to try to protect the citizens and the people that were in the bar, and that's probably what happened. I mean, because of his actions, he stopped other people from being harmed or killed. He's just a hero, and my heart goes out to him and his family.
Yes, definitely. Steve, thanks so much for being with us. We appreciate everything. So now we want to go to Kana Whitworth, who is also on the scene, and she's been there for hours. Kana, how are you doing?
Hey, Kimberly, thanks. Yeah, we've been here all night long into the wee hours of the morning. I have to tell you, we've been talking with victims, and some of them are still out here. They've been up all night long telling their absolutely horrifying stories about what happened. And I'm sure you've mentioned it was college night there. This bar was packed with hundreds of students there to celebrate 21st birthdays. It's a place that some of them go 2 or 3 times a week. It was actually described to me as their safe place. And then I have to tell you, it's an 18 and up club. And so what we're seeing that's been really scary is parents arriving to the scene, absolutely frantic. They're looking for their loved ones, and it's been terrifying. Currently, authorities are working to identify the victims right now. So many of them, though, that made it out because of heroics performed by people that were inside the bar, just patrons there. I spoke with a young man who said he saw someone throw a bar stool through a window. So he did the same thing, threw a bar stool through a window, and that's how they got some 30 people out of there to safety. I think we actually can listen to what he had to say.
There is a bunch of us that were just looking for cover, and we were standing right next to a pool table, and so we got everyone behind the pool table and down, and then there was probably 6 or 7 of us guys just dogpiling over the girls that were beneath
protecting
us.
them.
Yeah, because it's my family. That's what you do with your family. And we waited, hid as low and as quiet, and telling people to turn off their cell phones so that we wouldn't draw attention to ourselves until the first round of shots ended. And then I knew that we had a gap because he was either going to reload, change weapons, whatever he was doing, we had to act now if we wanted these people to live. So I was getting up from where I was lying on top of people and looked over and saw someone had thrown a bar stool through one of the windows because the closest exit was far down that way or closer towards him, and we were going to go
Just
towards
make you a
him, and so
target.
we needed to get out of there, and this was the best way to do it. So I grabbed a bar stool. We went through the window, and then whoever was in the front basically was pushing the glass down and jumping out and helping the guys and girls out, and we just stood there basically forcing as many people as we could out as fast as we could until we cleared everyone out, and then we jumped out ourselves. Then it was just trying to collect everyone and push them down out of sight and as far away as possible.
So isn't that incredible to hear? And what he told me after that, Kimberly, was that once they got all those people to safety, they actually started heading back because people were kind of scattered. They didn't know what to do. Some people were calling their parents, and he just sort of tried to funnel everybody out to safety and just get them out of there. It's a really compelling story when you hear these people talk about what happened to them. And then we also heard from a young man and his father, and the father feeling like he almost had regrets because he only did things to keep his son safe. I mean, that's the kind of things that people are thinking about right now. I think we have that sound as well. Kimberly, it's incredibly emotional if we can listen to that.
Yes.
Right next to the entrance, we were getting ready to leave. We had some pool, and some smoke came in. I guess he had rolled some smoke in, and he fired the first shot, and I knew it was live. I knew it was real. And my son thought it was a joke. So I pulled him down and got some behind cover and looked up, and he was moving to the right. He shot the front doorman, bouncer, just a young man. And he shot the cashier, just a young girl. And then he started moving to the right. He wasn't looking at us. And he went into the office where all the cash and stuff is. He didn't say anything at all. He just started shooting. And I should have stayed till he changed his clip. But I was worried about my boy. But I should have stayed. I apologize to anybody who got hurt or passed. I'm sorry.
Wow. That's hard to watch.
That's so hard to hear, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, and just you have to imagine, Kimberly, what it's like for these people making these decisions in the heat of the moment, and their life really depends on it. The sheriff actually just got choked up here a few minutes ago because he said they had 6 or 7 off-duty officers actually in that club when the shooting happened, and that parents have come up to him, and he actually started crying when he said this, that parents have come up to him and said, "Your officers shielded my kids. They
Wow.
saved their life."
Wow.
It's incredible. I spoke with another young woman who said a bartender saved her life. He knew the layout of the place, and so he pulled her up like a ladder into the attic, and that's where they hid until this entire thing was over. So it's been a traumatic evening for everybody involved, and as a lot of people were leaving, it was a pretty incredible moment. There were sheriff's deputies, fire authorities, and then victims, and then just people coming out here to support them. Victims that actually had bandages on their legs, they gathered in a prayer circle. And they said after that, this community is going to come back stronger than ever. Kimberly, this is a community that 2 years ago was voted one of the safest in this country.
Yes, which proves it can happen anywhere at any time, and it's becoming so regular now. It's really scary.
I know.
So, Kana,
it's hard to hear, and when you ask people about that, sorry, yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say, what's it like for you being there? You've covered these sorts of things before. What's the mood for you being there in the middle of this and seeing these things happen over and over again, week by week?
I think, again, is the operative word there. I mean, really, again, we're out here again. We're doing this again. This has happened in our country again. People are sickened by that. And what's really sad is that so many people I spoke with, this is a country bar. So a lot of them were actually in Las Vegas. They were at that Jason Aldean concert when that massacre happened. So they have experienced something like this now twice in their lifetime. And that is just twice too much.
Absolutely. Kana, thank you so much for your reporting and being there. And of course, you'll be on the scene much longer as well. So thank you so much for joining us. So now I want to, of course, move to more information that's happening today, other news that is breaking. If you haven't heard, Attorney General Jeff Sessions is also making headlines because he was fired recently. So I want to go to Jack Date in our D.C. bureau. Jack, how are you doing this morning?
Okay, Kimberly, how are you?
Very good. So Jeff Sessions, he's fired literally 24 hours after the midterm elections, and he was replaced by his chief of staff, Matt Whitaker. I want you to tell us what you know about Matt and what does this mean for the Mueller investigation?
So Matt Whitaker is a former U.S. attorney from Iowa. He was brought in to be Jeff Sessions' chief of staff after Jeff Sessions' chief of staff was promoted within the Justice Department, and he's well regarded within the Justice Department. He actually played college football too. He was a tight end at the University of Iowa, and he has been elevated to be acting Attorney General now. And so, for all intents and purposes, he has the authority and has oversight over the Mueller probe.
Yes. So. Can you hear me?
Yes, Kimberly, go ahead.
Yes. So what are the Democrats saying about this move, and what can they actually do now, since they've taken back over the House?
Well, so, Democrats have been somewhat critical of the appointment of Matt Whitaker as acting Attorney General in this role, because before he came back to the Justice Department, he was publicly very critical of the Mueller probe, and so, he's already on the record saying things about it. Democrats have questions about whether he's able to be objective about any decisions that he might have to make about the probe, since he's already been critical of it. And so that raises questions about whether he should recuse himself from the probe and whether he should really go through the kind of ethics investigation or ethics evaluation that the career attorneys might do in a case like this. And it's not clear that any of that's happening with Mr. Whitaker. So, Democrats are concerned about that. But as they take over the House, they'll have subpoena authority, and they'll be able to call him up for questioning, and he'll be under oath, and he'll have to testify about his decisions. And so, that may be the check on what he ultimately does and decisions that he makes regarding the Mueller probe.
Well, it'll certainly be very interesting. Jack, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate it.
Sure thing.
Yeah, so now we're going to go to Karen Travers, who's over at the White House. Karen, how are you doing?
Hey, Kimberly.
Very good to see you. So I want to hear what you think about what the White House is saying about this new move with Jeff Sessions out and Matt Whitaker in.
Kimberly, it was not unexpected that the president was going to push Jeff Sessions out of the Justice Department at some point. There have certainly been rumblings about this for weeks, months, even a year and a half. Jeff Sessions has been on the ropes since 2017 when he made that decision to recuse himself from the Russia probe. That became the source of the president's frustration when it came to his attorney general. Remember, it was just in September when the president did an interview and he said, "We don't have an attorney general." The next day at the White House, he was asked to clarify and said he doesn't always agree with Jeff Sessions on things and he'd like him to do more, but did confirm that he was, in fact, still on his job. The thing that was interesting yesterday, Kimberly, was that the president was asked about potential staff shakeup, including Jeff Sessions out at Justice. And the president said he wanted to answer that question at a better time. At that point, in the late morning, early afternoon, the president's chief of staff, John Kelly, had already reached out to Jeff Sessions and told him the president wanted him to offer his resignation. So, like many things here in Washington, it was a letter of resignation, but it was at the request of the president, which, of course, Kimberly, is a firing.
Yes, it's a firing. Do we have any idea on who the full-time replacements, who the considerations are, who it might be?
Yeah, the White House is not getting into any of that just yet, but certainly it's something that they'll be moving forward quickly on. Names that have been tossed around down here in Washington. Senator Lindsey Graham, who has said he would like to stay in the Senate. He's comfortable up there on Capitol Hill. Former New Jersey Governor Chris Christie is, of course, a name that will get a lot of attention, given his work as a federal prosecutor and his ties to the president, a very close ally, advisor, confidant of the president. But now the Senate would have to move forward once the president announces his pick to take over full-time at the Justice Department. There would have to be a confirmation that would take place up on Capitol Hill. And of course, the midterm results this week, Republicans picked up 3 seats in the Senate. So it's hard to see how they would do this in the next couple of weeks during this lame duck session. But if they wait till January, they have a bigger majority at that point.
Yes, and as if there isn't enough crazy news, I do want to make sure I ask you about Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg, who was hospitalized. What do we know about that?
The Supreme Court said today that the 85-year-old Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg was hospitalized overnight at George Washington Hospital, just a few blocks away here at the White House, for fracturing 3 ribs on her left side. She fell at her office at the court last night and actually went home after that, but she was experiencing some discomfort, went to the hospital to get it checked out, and Kimberly, after tests showed that she had fractured 3 ribs, they kept her overnight for observation and treatment. So the reaction from the White House today, Kellyanne Conway, senior counselor to the president, said that everybody here was praying for Ruth Bader Ginsburg.
Absolutely, we are. Thank you so much, Karen. We appreciate you joining us.
Thanks.
So guys, that's it for now. We appreciate you joining us on ABC News Live here on The Debrief. Of course, for more updates about this mass shooting and everything else, you can go to abcnews.com or check us out on the app. And until then, I'm Kimberly Brooks. See you soon.